I was not invited to play. My ideas were not interesting or listened.
For years, David Schwimmer didn't just play Ross Geller. He became him in the eyes of the world. Fame came fast, massive, and unforgettable. But now, at 59, Schwimmer is finally revealing the uncomfortable truth behind why Hollywood stopped knocking on his door. This isn't a story about scandals or bad choices. It's about how one legendary role quietly reshaped his entire career, and not in the way fans imagine. In this video, we uncover how global success turned into an invisible barrier, why casting directors began to look past him, and how being loved by millions may have cost him everything he worked for. What Schwimmer shares now is honest, raw, and deeply human, and it changes the way we understand fame itself. David Schwimmer was born in 1966 in Queens, New York, and raised mostly in Los Angeles by two successful attorneys. His childhood was stable and privileged, with no major public tragedies or hardships. Yet the struggles he later spoke about were emotional rather than external. From an early age, Schwimmer was serious, introverted, and socially awkward. He often felt out of place among his peers and struggled with confidence, especially in settings that favored charm and ease. This sense of isolation pushed him toward theater, not for fame, but as a refuge. Acting gave him a way to express emotions he couldn't easily handle in everyday life, and offered control in situations that otherwise felt overwhelming. Growing up with high-achieving parents also brought quiet pressure. Without being directly stated, expectations to succeed weighed heavily on him. Schwimmer became intensely driven at a young age, always planning and pushing himself forward. While that focus later fueled his career, it cost him a carefree childhood. His burden wasn't dramatic or visible, but the constant seriousness and self-pressure slowly took their toll, shaping the person he would become. After graduating from Northwestern University with a degree in theater, Schwimmer co-founded the Looking Glass Theater Company in Chicago. Theater was where he felt most grounded and creatively fulfilled, but it did not pay the bills. When he moved to Los Angeles to pursue television and film work, he quickly discovered how unforgiving the business could be. He auditioned constantly, but was usually offered only small, short-term roles, guest appearances or minor recurring parts that never lasted long enough to provide financial security. As a result, he spent much of his early career working as a waiter just to survive. Reflecting on that period, he once said, "I would get 3 episodes here, 4 episodes there. You never make enough money that way, so I was waiting tables for years." The emotional toll of this instability was significant. Schwimmer has spoken openly about how rejection and uncertainty wore him down, especially because he had entered acting with a deep sense of seriousness and commitment. After starring in a short-lived sitcom that was quickly canceled, he became so disillusioned with television that he told his agent to stop sending him TV scripts altogether. He felt the medium didn't allow him to grow as an actor and considered abandoning Hollywood entirely to return to theater. "I was really unhappy doing television at that point," he has said. "I felt like it wasn't why I became an actor." Despite these doubts, he did not stop working. He continued performing with Looking Glass whenever possible, and remained disciplined about auditions, even when his confidence was low. Practical support during this time mattered enormously. The managers at the restaurant where he waited tables allowed him flexibility to leave for auditions, a small but crucial kindness that enabled him to keep pursuing acting without losing his livelihood. He has acknowledged how important that understanding was, noting that without it, he might have been forced to give up. The turning point came when his agent urged him to read a script for a new ensemble comedy. Schwimmer was hesitant, given his past disappointments, But the idea of an ensemble appealed to his theater roots. When he read the script for Friends, something felt different. The show's creators had already envisioned him in the role of Ross, and that early vote of confidence mattered. Looking back, Schwimmer later reflected on how rare that alignment was, saying, "The miracle is the casting. To find 6 people who actually have chemistry with each other is kind of extraordinary." Friends transformed his career almost overnight, but the success was built on years of endurance rather than sudden luck. Schwimmer overcame his early struggles not by forcing fame, but by staying committed to his craft, leaning on the support of people who believed in him, and eventually allowing himself to take a risk on an opportunity he had nearly turned down. His story illustrates how persistence, community, and timing can converge, often after long periods of doubt, to change everything. The impact of Friends on David Schwimmer's career was profound, complex, and often contradictory. While the show transformed him into one of the most recognizable actors in the world and gave him extraordinary professional opportunities, it also brought challenges that reshaped his relationship with acting, fame, and even his own identity. On the positive side, Friends gave Schwimmer a level of stability and creative validation he had never experienced before. After years of struggling with small roles and financial insecurity, the series offered steady work, a strong ensemble dynamic, and a character that allowed him to showcase both comedic timing and emotional depth. Ross Geller was not just a sitcom caricature. Schwimmer infused him with vulnerability, awkwardness, and sincerity, traits that resonated with audiences and helped make the character iconic. The show's success gave Schwimmer financial freedom and the ability to choose projects based on interest rather than necessity. It also allowed him to return to his theatrical roots, directing stage productions and later founding theater initiatives that supported new work. The atmosphere on the set itself was largely positive, especially in the early seasons. Schwimmer has often spoken about the closeness of the 6 main cast members, emphasizing that the ensemble felt more like a company than a hierarchy. They supported one another creatively and personally, and this unity eventually extended into their contract negotiations, when they famously banded together to demand equal pay. That sense of solidarity was rare in television at the time and helped protect the cast from internal competition. Schwimmer later described the experience as unique, saying that the chemistry among the 6 actors felt like a miracle, something that couldn't be manufactured. However, the darker side of Friends emerged as the show's popularity exploded. Schwimmer has been very open about how overwhelming fame became for him. Unlike some of his castmates, he struggled deeply with the loss of anonymity. Being constantly recognized, photographed, and followed made him anxious and withdrawn. He is described feeling trapped by public attention, unable to perform ordinary tasks like walking down the street or sitting in a cafe without being watched. This constant visibility clashed with his naturally private personality and intensified long-standing feelings of self-consciousness. On set, the pressure also grew as expectations mounted. What began as a creative collaboration gradually became a global machine, with massive ratings, media scrutiny, and relentless schedules. While the cast remained close, the workload was exhausting, and Schwimmer has acknowledged that the success sometimes felt suffocating rather than celebratory. The laughter and applause from live audiences were real, but so was the sense that he was becoming inseparable from Ross Geller in the public imagination. Perhaps the most lasting negative impact was typecasting. Schwimmer found it difficult to escape the shadow of Ross, even after the show ended. Casting directors and audiences struggled to see him as anything else, which limited the range of roles he was offered. This frustration pushed him to step away from acting at times and focus more on directing, both in theater and film, where he felt he could express himself without being boxed into a familiar persona. In the end, Friends gave David Schwimmer immense success, lifelong friendships, and creative opportunities that would not have been possible otherwise. At the same time, it cost him privacy, complicated his sense of self, and forced him to wrestle with the unintended consequences of global fame. His experience reflects the double-edged nature of cultural phenomenon. Friends made him, but it also defined him in ways he has spent much of his later career trying to move beyond. At 59, David Schwimmer has openly addressed why Hollywood rarely casts him in major roles anymore, and the reason traces back to the very success that made him famous. His portrayal of Ross Geller on Friends turned him into a global icon, but it also created a lasting problem: typecasting. For many casting directors and audiences, Schwimmer never fully escaped the image of Ross, making it difficult for Hollywood to see him as anything else. Schwimmer has admitted that some early career decisions affected his path. He famously turned down roles that later became massive film franchises, choices that could have shifted him toward long-term movie stardom. Instead, he deliberately moved away from blockbuster films and focused on theater, directing, and smaller, character-driven projects. He has also spoken honestly about how overwhelming fame was for him during the Friends years. Constant public attention made him uncomfortable, leading him to step back from the Hollywood spotlight rather than chase it. That quieter approach, while creatively fulfilling, placed him outside the industry's mainstream casting cycle. Today, Schwimmer continues to work steadily, but the shadow of Friends remains powerful. Hollywood didn't reject him outright. It simply never learned how to see him beyond Ross.